Welcome to our audience this evening to another round of conversations with Beks. This evening, we're joined by Flavia Maximo, who's based very far away, representing us in the South American market. But before I introduce you to Flavia, I'll just introduce myself. For those that don't know me, my name is Beks Ndlovu. I'm the founder and CEO of African Bush Camps, a safari company that operates safari camps in Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Zambia. We started African Bush Camp 16 years ago with our first camp in Zimbabwe, which was Somalisa Camp. And that was in 2006. And very quickly, we went over to Botswana to then start Linyanti Bush Camp. And in no time, we were doing mobile safaris in Botswana and then started redeveloping Zimbabwe again. And 16 years later, we're just about to open our 16th camp in Botswana in the Okavango Delta. So we're very excited about that. But in the meantime, I want to introduce you to Flavia, who will maybe tell us a little bit about where she is actually sitting currently during this period of time and what it is that she does for African Bush Camps and how we're connected. And by the way, today we're taking a slightly different format in that I'm normally the one sitting around our virtual campfire and asking the questions. But Flavia decided that actually it was her turn. She wanted to fire off the questions to me. So very delighted to have you, Flavia, and thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. And thanks to our audience again for joining us on this episode of Conversations with Beks. Flavia?
Thank you, Beks. It is a pleasure, an honor. I don't even know how to say how happy I am to be with you in this virtual room around the campfire and talking to you about one of our beautiful camps. And I'm very happy and excited. I'm in São Paulo right now, Brazil, sitting and quarantining, waiting for the time to come for us to be able to hug each other again and do things together. But in the meantime, what I do here is to spread the word about African Bush Camps, this amazing company that you founded 16 years ago and that I'm so proud to represent. So it is a pleasure, an honor, and I'm gonna say a few words in Portuguese, porque eu estou muito feliz de estar nessa sala com você. É um prazer enorme. Você é uma pessoa inspiradora, uma pessoa que nos deixa movido a agir e falar da África. Então, muito obrigada. Thank you for being so inspiring. I think that when I talk about the company and I'm able to talk about you and your background, it makes a difference to promote and to talk about a company that have somebody like you on the background. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Flavia. And it's a great honor to have you as part of the team. You know, with everything that we do, it's not just about the person who founded the business or the person in charge at the time. And thank you, by the way, for the honor and the privilege of allowing me to actually, you know, lead the business and drive this vision that you greatly support. You've been an incredible support for us as we've looked to grow in the South American market, and you've done an incredible job. So thank you.
It's all about love. So I wanted to talk to you about Nyamatusi. I know it's a very dear one for us. And first of all, I want to know how our marketing team came up with the name. Where is this name came from?
So Nyamatusi, as you say, it's very dear to all of us, these particular camps. And it's dear to us because it's something that was planted as a seed over 20 years ago during my canoeing and guiding days in monopools. And Nyamatusi, the literal translation is quite hardcore. I mean, the literal translation is meat on hooves, like wild meat. But the very eloquent meaning which the locals gave it, Nyamatusi meaning wild game, because the place is wild, it's very remote, and wildlife wouldn't necessarily see lots of people down in that part of the world. And I suppose it's still the same, but it was even less so back in the days with the locals that lived down in the Zambezi Valley floor. So Nyamatusi, Nyama meaning game, and then Tusi is wild or bush.
Wow. So it wasn't a marketing thing. It's a
No,
ancestry.
no,
Nice.
it was a name that we can't take credit for. So Nyamatusi is actually the wilderness area, that part of Monopools that has never been developed before, that part that has always been referred to as the wilderness area of Monopools, where it has always had restricted access. And we feel very privileged to be able to be given access to it to the extent that we have Nyamatusi Camp and Nyamatusi Mahogany as of beginning of last year.
Nice. And you said that it was when you were canoeing and guiding. How did you choose the location of the camp? How did that happen?
So I remember on a number of canoeing safaris, I used to do these multi-day canoeing safaris on the Zambezi River. And on one of the stretches is a 3-night mana canoeing safari where you spend each night in a different location. And that particular spot is one of the places I would stop at for lunch during the second and the last night. And on a number of occasions, I have such fond memory of sitting under the acacia trees when they had their fruit on them. And this fruit is edible and the elephants love it because it's a very rich source of protein. And sitting under those acacias and having these huge, big 6-ton giant almost straddle over us and above us,
Wow.
we're in amongst their company. Sometimes we'll be having a nap under the shade of these trees and just be completely surrounded by these gentle giants. And that spatial experience, I remember sitting there and thinking, imagine if this was your home. And this was reflecting back on the local people that actually used to live there in season. Imagine what it would be like to have been living here amongst this wildlife. And of course, at the back of my head over time, I wonder what it would be like to be able to have a place here where one could share this amazing scenery, this amazing wildlife with people from all walks of life. And as I say, over 20 years now, that vision has now manifested itself, and we're very privileged to be able to operate in Nyamatusi in that particular area.
Beautiful story. I love to learn about that. And let me ask you, how was because Nyamatusi is one of our newest camps. We cannot forget about Leadwood, that's about to be open and used by our guests, but Nyamatusi is one of the most recent. And I know you talked a lot about how inspiring the location is, but I want to know where did you get the concept for the lodge? Because it's very unique. How did that happen?
Nyamatusi, Flavia, was like most of our locations that we develop. We really like to honor the landscape, the local surroundings, and most of all, honor the local culture and the people. And so Nyamatusi is no different. There's various elements of it around thatch. I've never been a huge, big fan of building with thatch, actually. But the people in that particular area, in a little village called Nyamakati, they sell thatch, and they actually work with thatch as a medium for roofing, for insulation, for building, and they do an incredible job at that. So it was a way to also support and reflect the local culture in the area using the thatch in the main areas of both camps. But also there's various elements that we brought in that also honor the people of Zimbabwe. So a big component of what we used to build the lodge, we actually sourced and built a bulk of it in Zimbabwe. Again, that was honoring local artists and other artisans that really do a great job with the various materials, all the way from wooden materials to copper, to grass mats, to even yoga mats that are made out of grass and bark, harvested sustainably. Lanterns in our main areas that are built out of grass that reflect the artistry of the netting that the locals used to use on the Zambezi River as fish nets. And of course, the basketry around the decorations of some of our walls in the main areas that again is very reflective of the local artists and what we do locally. So all of those elements and pulling them and bring them together was absolutely incredible. And I worked very closely with Nicole Snatter on that project, who was the interior decorator who helped pull everything together and really worked her magic into making sure that this vision translated into reality. But you know, the building and the makeup of it was also done by a gentleman called Duncan Elliott, who I've worked with over the last 8 years. So really those two individuals contributed immensely to ensuring that we had this amazing product that came and was born out of a genuine vision to celebrate the people of Zimbabwe, celebrate the landscape, and honor the wildlife around us.
This is beautiful, especially coming from you because you're from Zimbabwe. So it's nice to have your culture and the beauty of the country showcased through the rooms. And talking about the rooms, I know there's some particular elements about the location of each room. How was that planned?
So what I always say about the planning, or at least the allocation of where each tent or each room must go, is really not determined by us. It's determined by the landscape. So it's very important always to listen, I believe, to the landscape to be able to tell you where it wants or where certain things should go. It's very important when you build a camp to identify with the trees, for example. The trees are a very important element of it. They provide cover for protection. They provide shade. And of course, they provide food, in some cases, for the wildlife that it attracts. So a lot of these elements came into play in terms of allocating where exactly we would have each unit. And there's no particular pattern. What was important was that we had each room or each tent enjoy its own special views that nobody else saw, at least in a different context, but also that each room or each tent had privacy, it had shade, and did not impact the movement of wildlife within the area. As you can imagine, these tents spread along the Zambezi River. There's a number of hippo trails, of course, elephant paths, which you can see very clearly when you're building. So we've tried to also work around those and also use them so that they are actually an attractive proposition for you to be sitting by your deck or sitting inside your swimming pool and have a big elephant bull walk right past you. So all of those things came into play, and that's really what dictated to us where we should put certain tents.
I see. And you've been guiding for a long time. And now I want to ask you this question about a particular night that you've spent under the African sky and that you had an amazing experience that you wanted to share with us. That's what I want to know. Now, tell me.
So Flavia, I must confess there's been plenty. And just thinking back in terms of what has been my highlight, gosh, so difficult. I mean, I've spent nights in the desert under the stars in Namibia. I've spent nights in the Mahogany, also under the stars in a typical sort of landscape under full moon, where if you really feel like you're on top of some moon. And of course, I've also had interactive nights with wildlife. I would say probably was being with my children in a platform in Wangi National Park at night and having elephants. This was around about October, which is the heightened season when elephants group together in very large herds. And just hearing the entire night where we could hardly hear each other talking, because if it wasn't elephants rumbling, there was buffalo in the background. So it sounded like you're on a cattle farm. If it wasn't buffalo, it was lions calling. If it wasn't lions calling, it was buffalo stampeding and elephants trumpeting. And of course, covered with that was the intensity of the smells of the environment, from all the dust, from all the water, from all the animal dung. And as you can imagine, the sounds are just so loud and so overwhelming, and not being able to see with your eyes, except in some cases, maybe very briefly shadows in the background. And I just remember my kids just expressing how incredible that was for them to experience. And as incredible as that was for them, it was for me too. And what I always say about guiding is that I may have seen elephants multiple millions of times. I may have seen lions thousands of times. But when you see and have these experiences through somebody else's eyes or through somebody else's experiences, it really is like seeing or experiencing it for the first time. And so that was just one of the occasions that it was really, really special. But as I say, there are plenty of these cases where really nature and wildlife in Africa has delivered some of the most incredible experiences for me, for which I'm grateful.
How old were your kids when that happened?
So that last experience, I would say, was probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But, you know, I go on safari with my kids every year, sometimes individually, but most of the time collectively, because they really have this gift of heritage that I like them to be exposed to. And they really love being in the bush and going on safari. And today we promote family safaris for that very reason, in that we believe as African bush camps that they're the future generations. And if they have a say, which they're already marking their way and having a say in the future in terms of, you know, what is our responsibility? What are we doing? Dad, what are you doing to influence and make your mark in terms of influencing how nature is protected, how that nature is going to be around for their great-grandchildren? So and as I say, living through these experiences with my kids and looking at it through their eyes has been so rewarding for me.
Well, I have a 2 years old son, and I'm ready. I'm ready to bring him to the bush. And that leads me to another question. Because African bush camps, we do have camps and lodges where we accommodate kids any age, like months old. They are welcome to stay with us. This is precious. Like, I have no words. I can't express how precious it is. And actually, Nyamatusi has a mahogany camp where we have huge rooms for families. Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk to me about this, because I think that having the best guides in Africa makes us able to welcome children any age and have them comfortably staying with us in these wilderness areas. And you been a guide for such a long time. And I think that you also bring this respect about our reputation of having the best guides in Africa, because I have no doubt about that. Nobody has. So do you talk to me about this, about families, guides, and the high quality of guides that we have in African bush camps?
Yeah, so Flavia, I really believe that, you know, of course, we've got great camps. They look great, and we put an enormous amount of energy into making sure that they're stylish and they're very much in fitting with the landscape and the natural habitat. But really, you've hit the nail on the head. The one thing that we do boast is our guides. I've always, when I founded the business 16 years ago, that was on the back of me doing private guided safaris all over Africa. So I got to experience different camps and lodges, different guides who I would partner with on a particular safari. And it became very evident that the quality of your guide will transform a good safari into an exceptional safari. And so that's really been, I suppose, in a way, part of how we've managed to get ahead in this competitive environment, is by making sure that we invest more in the resource of guides and making sure that we put the guides training on, and we have people that give input and invest in guiding, and people that are passionate about being out in the wild, being out in the bush. And that makes a phenomenal difference. So in a sense, the desire really for me when I started this business was to create these playgrounds where knowledgeable, passionate guides from all over Africa and other naturalists from all over the world would come and be the envy of those camps, where they could come and do what they do, which is share their passion of the wilderness with the rest of the world. So in a sense, that's really materially been the prerequisite, is passion, enthusiasm, and knowledge. All of that sort of stuff you can teach people. But the passion and the enthusiasm, and when I talk about passion and enthusiasm, not just for the wildlife, but also for sharing those experiences with other people. And that really is what shines out with our guides. And particularly when you see some of our guides who are very passionate about sharing with future generations, it makes an incredible difference, where you've got these young kids literally in tears when they depart from our camps, because they feel they have made a lifelong friend with their guide who's taught them so much. And during that period of time, they learn a lot, not just about the wildlife, but about the issues around wildlife, the issues around conservation, the issues that plague us in Africa. I'm very much of a big advocate, and our organization really pushes for educating the youth. Part of our foundation's philosophy is to be able to educate future generations. I believe that the youth are really our next best chance of being able to manage to really look after the wildlife space indefinitely and have a voice that will resonate with the language of conservation that we speak to today. So educational programs where over 1,000 kids benefit from throughout the places that we operate in Southern Africa, the impact of that where people or these kids are growing up valuing wildlife and valuing tourism and the landscape in which they belong to is ultimately very important. And just as important as it is for the children in Africa to understand and really appreciate the heritage, it's equally important that when families come across, their kids get that education where they can be influential in the places where they come from. They can go and tell their friends. And we've seen it, especially in recent times, with the lack of diversity, where people are not treated equally. We have seen the youth really step up to that evidence where they speak out and really influence that change. So we really believe these family safaris or these family camps are set up to do just that, to be able to go back home and have that impact, but also form lifelong bonds with other children from Africa that together can truly make a difference in the future.
That was a powerful and inspiring answer. Thank you very much for that. I love that. You're so right. And when you said about people living in tears from the camps, I must say I did that myself. I was crying when I left some of our camps because of the guides, the experience, and the passion that they shared.
I think, Flavia, it's such an unexpected thing for a lot of people. But it really should be. It should be come to Africa and spend time with the most phenomenal guides in Africa.
Yes.
And it's so unexpected that when people come, they form this really unique bond with our guides. And it's the people. Whilst people do come out and they're in awe of the wildlife, which, there's reason for people to be in awe of it. But the people is what really grabs them to the extent that people keep coming back. Some people once every year, some people once every 2 years. And it's those people that end up really deeply supporting the conservation initiatives and the community initiatives that we run through our foundation.
Right, and our foundation is really beautiful because we actually work with them. I feel it's a collaboration, it's not charity. And through African bush camps, I feel that we are empowering those communities. So it's really nice what we do with our communities. Is there any particular thing that we do in Zimbabwe that you would like to highlight through our foundation?
So there's a number of things. I've spoken about education being quite a big driver. Right now, we're looking at developing early childhood centers for young kids that are going into early learning. But during this time of COVID, we've really tried to prioritize. As you can imagine, resources are not as they would be, or not as we expected them to, because of a lack of tourism. So we've really tried to prioritize, and we've continued to prioritize early learning centers in Wangame, but also in places outside of Bumi Hill Safari Lodge in the Mola area. And one of the big things that we've tried to do is also just really focus on health. What can we do to improve their health and limit some of the risks, whether it's building ablution blocks so that out of 200 kids, they're not sharing one toilet, for example. So they're able to safely go to, build a number of toilets with our funding and with our support to limit the risk of contracting COVID-19. So we've gone into those sort of things, providing people sanitation, water, soap dispensers so they can wash their hands, the Tippy Tap project that we've introduced and are currently actually still rolling out with the support of having community groups of women make masks and various other things to help with the pandemic, to help our staff. We buy the masks from them. our future guests that are going to be traveling in our camps, they're going to be able to buy some of those masks in our shops. So there's a whole entrepreneurs project happening concurrently. But also, during this period of time, it's been a time where the rangers or the people that are looking after the wildlife are really at risk. But at the same time, the resources are very few. So we've really bulked up and are busy almost completing an anti-poaching unit in Manapools and employing extra personnel to be able to reinforce the security in those areas. And we're going to be running a big protein supplement program for the rangers to make sure that they've got enough body fuel in order for them to carry out their work. But we're doing the same in Wange, where we will be helping with a protein supplement program, but also supplementing that with staple diets so that our rangers are looked after and fed during this period of time so that they can effectively carry out their work. We can't work alongside people that on the brink of poverty, on the brink of hunger. We've got to support those initiatives. And that really is a response to the current situation. So these are some of the programs that we're putting in place. And we've been very fortunate to get great support from our previous guests. And we continue to advocate that if people want to support us through our foundation, obviously they can find us via the African Bush Camps website or through the African Bush Camps Foundation website, our social media platforms, in order to support some of these initiatives, particularly during this period of time. The greatest support that people can give us is being able to book for future travel. And it's that support that allows us to be able to give back as a business, but also allow us to be able to educate and bring these awareness issues to the audience and the people that visit our safari camps.
And that's what makes to work with you so inspiring, because we know it's going towards something really bigger than only an accommodation. You talked about body fuel. We're approaching lunchtime here in Brazil. I love the food in our camps. It's so good. It tastes so good. And there's wine pairing with our meals. So it's so special. But what I want to know is, do you cook?
I cook. I particularly zoned in on my cooking skills have become super refined over the last 6 months during lockdown. Cooking is something that I've always loved to do, but, I get super frustrated when I don't have the time to actually go out, buy the ingredients, and actually have the time to prepare a good meal. But of course, the one thing that COVID has allowed us to do is spend more time at home and spend more time with our loved ones. So it's been incredible being able to open up the fridge and say, what can I create with what I have? And it's amazing what actually does come out. So no, I've been very grateful to spend this time, and I actually enjoy it. But as I say, it's a question of taking the time to actually do it.
And what was your best creation for the past 6 months?
Well, I've been exploring quite a lot cooking in either using the shells of fruit or the shells of avocado, implanting, like particularly vegan meals when you have people over that are vegan. My children are exploring being vegetarian, sometimes being vegan. So we try to do that. Their mother is a vegan. But yeah, it's been just also exploring the mixture of different meats with different vegetables, all cooked at the same time. Yeah, it's everything goes. I don't have a particular kind of meal, but I do enjoy sort of Thai fusion foods using a lot of spices and herbs. But everything is kind of figuring it out and working your way through it, depending on what you've got in your fridge. And I think that's the fun part of it.
Nice to learn that about you, because I'm a vegetarian, and African Bush Camps took care of my meals beautifully while I was traveling. So it was really nice. And by the quality of the food and the wine, I figured you would want that love wine and food. Am I right?
Both I equally love.
I knew it. So to wrap everything up, I wanted you to describe Nyamatusi, but using only one word. Is it possible? One word for Nyamatusi?
So that's extremely tough, Flavia. And I guess I would describe it in 2 words, but to me, the 2 words mean the same thing.
Okay.
One is wild, and the other is remote.
Oh.
And Nyamatusi is one of those areas that is truly wild, and being there and being inspired, you know, if I can just describe standing there on the floodplain, looking at this host of different wildlife species just move across the floodplain. In front of that, you've got a Zambezi River that's flowing. I mean, the Zambezi River is one of the world's iconic rivers. And on the other
Yes.
side, you've got possibly an acacia forest with a humongous backdrop that, as far as the eye can see, to the west, to the east, you've got this incredible backdrop of the Zambezi Escarpment, which is part of the Great African Rift Valley. And it just goes on and on, turning gray, blue, and then eventually it just disappears. And of course, it's the sounds, it's the smells, and the beauty about it is that you feel like you're the only ones there. That speaks to wild and remote.
Beks, I am speechless. It's beautiful. It was an amazing conversation. I really, really appreciate it. I've learned so much, and especially about you, the inspiration on what we do. I think that your history and everything that you've been doing, it brings a different light to the job, to the work, and to promoting African bush camps. So for that, I thank you very much. And for this precious conversation, I loved it. So thank you. And I hope to have you to talk to us a little bit more. There's a lot of camps that I want to learn from you about the creation, the concept, and everything. So I hope we can do it soon.
Great. Thank you very much, Flavia. Really great to be able to have this conversation with you. And I do need to thank our audience that has been very, very loyal in supporting us and following us, and also inspiring us to continue with these talks. So thank you very much to our audience, and thank you to the team. Again, thanks to you. And hope to see you next time.
Yes, please. Muito obrigada à nossa audiência que nos assistiu aqui hoje. Foi lindo, foi inspirador. Agora vocês entendem um pouco mais por que eu amo tanto essa empresa e por que dá tanto prazer e honra trabalhar para uma pessoa como o Beks. Thank you so much. Thank you.